Stay tuned for part 3 of In His Own Words.
Will is really, in a very real way, committing to the idea that he cannot sacrifice his mental health in the name of these other sorts of journeys that he wants to go on. Because let me tell you, on mental health, there's not as many second chances.
So in the book, I have a real button on people getting lost in their emotions. I hate it. Like, it signals destruction to me, right? Somebody is, you know, freaking out. And even Daddy-O would crack us for that shit growing up. Oh my God, Dad, is it? Yeah. We were raised at base survival.
Yeah. Even when we weren't.
Right.
Even when it wasn't.
Yeah.
Survival, the mentality.
The mentality was base survival.
Get cracked for getting lost in your emotions? Really? I can understand what he's saying here. He's saying that he can't stand for people to get lost in their emotions, but one reason is because he watched his dad get lost in his emotions, the negative ones, and he saw that the next thing that would happen most of the time would be that he would start beating up on his mother. So I can understand that that's one reason. But when you say that your emotions were stifled because your dad couldn't stand to see you guys get lost in your emotions, then that tells me something else. That explains why Will chooses to lay another brick, lay another brick, lay another brick, instead of allowing himself to feel those emotions even. So it's not a matter of, I feel the emotion and I'm fine with feeling it, but I will kind of control it. He's not letting himself even feel the emotion. I wonder, is that when the sergeant comes out or the military guy that he's built up in his imagination? This is not good. Moreover, yes, this is not good. But what did we see at the Oscars? Wasn't that getting lost in your emotions? Wasn't that acting just like your dad? I'm telling you guys, the worst thing that you see growing up, and you say, I'm never gonna be like mom, my aunt, my uncle, my dad, whoever the caregiver was. If you've got that mindset, trust you me, you are just like them. Absent being able to move through the healing process, you are just like them. That's just how it works. It's that unexpected, that subconscious expectation thing that I talked about in an earlier video. Let's move on.
We all delude ourselves a little bit around the things that scare us. We invent these stories to protect ourselves. Sometimes we'd rather blindfold ourselves than take a cold, hard look at the world exactly as it is. My first impulse is always to clean up the truth in my mind. I redesign it and replace it with whatever suits me, or really whatever suits you. I'm a crowd pleaser. I'm a master storyteller. I thought about showing you the flawless diamond, a swaggy, unbreakable winner, a fantasy image of a successful human being. The truth is whatever I decide to make you believe, and I will make you believe it. That's what I do. Of course, there's the red carpet walking, tight fade wearing, box office record breaking, I am legend, pull up doing jiggy ass Will Smith. And then there's me. This book is about me.
He ain't never lied. That's what we do. What did he grow up doing? An imitation world, an imagination. And he brought that into the here and now. It used to protect him now. But now as an adult, he's rewriting the reality to soothe his inner dynamics. And he prides himself on his imagination, but when it's being used to lay another brick, that it's not helpful. And we all are subject to these dynamics in our mind. We have to always remember that just because we see it that way doesn't mean that we're seeing it the right way. Let's move on.
Act 1, Chapter 1, Fear. Daddy-O was one of the greatest blessings of my life and also one of my greatest sources of pain. There were two issues. First, he had a brutal temper. And second, his drinking. When he was angry or drunk, he became an idiot. He would break his own rules, subvert his own objectives, destroy his own things. My mom is in many ways the total opposite of my father. Whereas Daddy-O was the boisterous, charismatic center of attention, my mom carried a quiet, reserved elegance. She loved words and always chose them carefully. My mother spoke with an academic sophistication. As much as we all suffered under Daddy-O's militaristic views of love and family, nobody suffered more than my mother. Each of my siblings remembers that night in the bedroom. With me standing there in the doorway, I watched my father punch my mother so hard that she spit up blood. That moment, probably more than any other moment in my life, has defined who I am today. Each of my siblings responded differently in ways that would go on to define who we were for much of our lives. If Harry was fight, Ellen was flight, and I became a pleaser. I wanted to please and placate him, because as long as Daddy-O was laughing and smiling, I believed we would be safe. I was the entertainer in the family. I wanted to keep everything light and fun and joyful. And while this psychological response would later bear artistic and financial fruits, it also meant that my little 9-year-old brain processed Daddy-O's abusive episodes as somehow being my fault. I should have been able to keep my father satisfied. I should have been able to protect my mother. I should have been able to make the family stable and happy. I should have been able to make everything all right. But that night in the bedroom, watching my father's fists collide with the woman I loved most in the world, watching as she collapsed on the ground, helpless, I just stood there. I was my mom's oldest son. I was less than 10 yards away, and I was the only chance she had for help. Yet I did nothing. It was then that my young identity congealed in my mind, an unshakable feeling that no matter what I have done, no matter how successful I've become, no matter how much money I've made or how many #1 hits I've had, how many box office records I've broken, there's that subtle and silent feeling always pulsating in the back of my mind that I'm a coward, that I've failed, that I'm sorry, my mom, so sorry.
That moment, more than any other time in my life, defined who I am today. A defining moment that reverberates 30, 40 years down the line. What could that be for you? Let's go on.
Will's mother eventually left his father and moved away to live with Will's grandmother.
Did you feel like you had an option as to whether to be there or to choose to leave?
I said, no, I'm not going to do this with my children there. No, this is, I'm not going to make them more upset with me screaming and hollering.
One of the things you said that was really strong too, you said part of the reason that you were standing up to Daddy is because you knew your kids were...
Yeah. Yes.
You knew your kids could hear, and you knew your kids could see.
Yes.
And she wanted us to think he wasn't hurting her.
Yeah. Maybe had I been more submissive, things may have been different. And I grit my teeth and buckle down. My children aren't going to be more rattled because I'm rattled.
That's so powerful. Simultaneously, you were teaching him that that's not how you treat a woman.
That was the only time in my life that I ever considered suicide.
Yes.
That was the only time in my life that I ever
thought about killing myself because it was all my failure in my mind. You know, the whole idea of me thinking of myself as a coward was new for her. You know, it's like we've never talked about it. The idea that I felt like I should have done something was so, you know, foreign. You know, so she reassured little Will that there was nothing that he could have done.
She reassured little Will. There is so much in that statement. Little Will. See, we get stuck on some emotional level at the age that we were when we were traumatized. And so every time that wound gets popped open, on some level, Will is back to being that little boy. This is so interesting. Now, on one hand, his mother's thinking that by, I guess she was touting her husband, is that the best you can do, yada, yada, because she didn't want her children to think that it was as bad as it was. But even in her saying these things, she knew that they were seeing this trauma. And she thought that she was protecting them on some level by being the big mouth and speaking back and not being what she calls submissive. But it didn't help. It's really interesting that it took all these years, over 40 years, for them to have the conversation that revealed to his mother how he was thinking as this little 10, 11-year-old child. We don't get it. So, regardless of what she did in the moment, trying to act like it wasn't hurting her, that it wasn't as bad as they thought it was, thinking that was protecting them, because she was adamant. She pounded with her fingers on the table when she said, my kids. Now, eventually, and I don't know how old Will was when this happened, but eventually she got out of that relationship. But the damage was done.
I never thought he was a coward.
Of course.
Yeah, you seem to take on responsibility for stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is a way of maintaining control, even if it's a dire, dark narrative. And I think that all of that responsibility taking is a way of controlling something you did throughout your career.
It was probably like a trauma reaction.
He watched his mother be physically abused. There was this real sense of fear. His father held the family in sort of the throes of fear, so everybody would sort of snap to it. In order for a child to survive that, they better have a rich imaginary world. So he got to take his imaginary world, the place he worked stuff through, and turned it into entertainment.
I was always intrigued with my mind, and very young, I knew I could feel how I wanted to feel, right? I had spent enough time in my mind, you know, that I knew I could ignore things, I could concentrate on other things, I could paint pictures. Like, I knew that I could get to a smile. It didn't matter what was going on. I could contort my mind to find a smile.
Dr. Ramani.
Will quitting the show may look like a failure to a lot of people, but there's actually another way to look at it, as a breakthrough. Perhaps for the first time, Will is choosing himself. He's not hiding behind humor or control or the idea of winning. Instead, he's giving himself space to process and deal with his past.
I knew that I could feel what I wanted to feel. See, survival mode. It helped him to get through that trauma, right? But that's not working today as a grown man with a family and a wife. That's not working today. You can't run from the realities in your face and retreat to that little boy, because it's going to be counterproductive.
We'll just swim a nice slow descent. Is that okay?
Chapter 16, Purpose.
They descend further with flashlights.
I ask myself, if you could snap your fingers and have any life you wanted, what would it look like? This question led me into an area of my inner world that had danger signs all over it. The answer would have to be extracted from the murky, swampy shadow regions of my psyche. What if I rip down all the boards and barriers and barricades, and whatever demon is in there takes over? What if I can't put it back? What if I like it being out?
Would you like to go a little deeper?
But I approached the dark place. I wanted to see what was in there. What are Will's feelings, Will's opinions, Will's needs, Will's ideas? Who are you really?
What if I ripped down all the barricades? What if, one by one, Will began to dismantle that wall? He clearly indicating here how fearful it is, because he doesn't know what's down there. And to some extent, he understands that he's going to have to give up this false control in order to reach that depth. And it's frightening to anybody. In conclusion, we've heard from Will's own mouth the dynamics that fed the event at the Oscars. So now what do we do with that information? Well, I'm hoping that you'll use it to be more compassionate, to seek to go deeper in understanding. And mostly, if you're a fellow trauma survivor, I hope that you will use this to dig into your own life and determine where some of the same dynamics might be playing out in your life. None of us are above this. Now, I'm not saying that any of us are going to go run up and slap some joker, okay? Much less in public. And I'm just saying that those kind of dynamics and the intensity of that occurs when we're deeply triggered from an unhealed wound that we're bearing in our souls. Let this be empowering to you. Let it be encouraging in that you know that, thank God we're not on somebody's stage or in the public making these mistakes. But it gives you a deeper understanding when you are triggered and you just fly off the handle. I mean, like a rocket shooting off. I encourage you to watch The Best Shape of My Life, the documentary. It comes in several parts and it's riveting. Okay. But also you should listen to the audio book or read the book Will. I have links to all of that below. I'm Dr. Linda F. Williams. Always remember, your greatest power is realizing the truth of who you are. Always know that truth. Hey, if you like what you see here today, please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so that you know when we upload, and like and share the video. Thanks.